Hello everyone, my name is Patrick McGrath Muniz. I'm speaking to you from my art studio here in New Territory, Texas. Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the tarot and the importance of understanding and developing an archetypal eye. When it comes to narrative painting, it becomes fundamental to understand these principles that might be invisible, hidden to the naked eye, but they're quite crucial when it comes to telling a story. So first of all, I'm going to tell my own story about how I came upon the tarot. First of all, even though I'm currently living in Texas, I grew up in the island of Puerto Rico, where I spent most of my childhood and youth during the 1980s and 90s, as well as my early art education during the 90s at the School of Fine Arts in San Juan, Puerto Rico, where I did my bachelor's degree. So most of my experiences and the things that I lived through in the island are the things that are informing my work in one way or another. Back in 2004, I decided to come to the US mainland and study and pursue my MFA at the Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia. That's where I developed my thesis titled Iconsumer, Icons for a Consumer's Post-Colonial Age, which revolved really around the hidden connections between Spanish colonial art, iconography, and American consumer culture. So basically, by combining the language derived from Spanish colonial iconography with that of American pop culture, I was able to bridge and bring these two worlds together and establishing a narrative that went across time by connecting the colonial roots with the neo-colonial ramifications. The paintings I created for this thesis incorporated tarot as part of the visual repertoire, even though they were not central to it. With time, my personal exploration and my interest for tarot intensified. Once I graduated from SCAD in 2007, I started reading more and examining the pagan roots of Christian iconography I was using in my work. I started reading and exploring more subjects in myth, alchemy, astrology, and also tarot, combined always with the imagery from contemporary consumer culture. Eventually, this building up of symbols and icons infused the work with deeper esoteric significance, making it multivalent, polysemic, and I found a multiplicity of things to be learned from these traditions. This exploration led me to consider creating my very own tarot deck. I consider this to be one of the greatest creative tools any artist can come up with. The more I start to work with these parallel narratives derived from different historical periods and esoteric traditions, the more I start to discern an underlying pattern. The idea of the archetypes was first proposed by the Greek philosopher Plato. He had this idea of these forms, these eidos or ideas that were pure mental forms that were imprinted in the soul before anyone was born into the world. And this concept was believed to embody the fundamental characteristics of a thing. They're not fixed, and sometimes they overlap. They're somewhat hard to define, but we know they're there. They transcend culture, time, and language. And they are recurring themes in myth, stories, legends, dreams, and in your own life. Carl Jung identified four main archetypes: the persona that shadow the anima or animus, and the self. These are the result of collective shared ancestral memories that persist in art, literature, and religion, but aren't obvious to the naked eye. We really have to develop what I mentioned before, an archetypal eye, an insight to be able to discern and see where these recurring themes appear in order to help us understand what the archetypes are really all about. There are plenty of examples of archetypes in art history. You can find, for example, through the Venus of Botticelli, the lover archetype. You can find the hero in the David by Michelangelo. And you can find many more examples of the mother archetype throughout art history, especially during the Renaissance and Baroque periods with the Madonnas and the Virgin Marys. But all those depictions of timeless archetypes can still be seen today, expressed in multiple forms in media, celebrities, and American pop culture. First of all, I'm a painter. I'm very much interested in spirituality, religion, history, but first and foremost, I'm a painter. So the language of the color palette is something that I'm quite familiar with. Mixing colors and going from the darks to the lights, different hues, different shades. And the more I do this, the more I started to realize that there was an interesting pattern and correspondence between mixing the colors in my palette the way I do and spreading the tarot cards and doing a reading. Something that I started to do more and more in recent years. Not because I believe necessarily in the ability to predict the future, although it intrigues me. I'm more interested in what these archetypes have to teach me at a personal level and also from a historical perspective, understanding the human story as a whole. I remember I often refer to the tarot as an encyclopedia of archetypes, but the more I think about it, the more it looks like a color palette, the archetypes being more like colors. And these colors can be mixed with each other and create different combinations, making it a lot more interesting, complex. But the same way you would develop a painter's eye or a eye for chroma, for being able to discern the different dimensions of color, the same applies to archetypes. And you become able to discern the different variations of the qualities and attributes of a certain archetype. You can call it an art form or a skill, and you develop it with practice. I see the color palette as a contemplative device for meditation, self-reflection, and deep introspection. I see the tarot exactly the same way. Understanding, channeling, and translating archetypes into art becomes a mirror to the soul and an antidote to this intolerable collective amnesia that affects us all, aided by the superfluous, distracted media keeping us disconnected from reality. Knowing thyself should become the ultimate goal. We should know ourselves. Tarot is a guide. Tarot, a deck of cards and visual tradition derived from Renaissance culture, offers lessons from the past while attempting to forecast the future through the use of timeless allegories and occult symbolism. Like common playing cards, tarot has 4 suits. These are swords, cups, staffs, and coins, which are sometimes referred to as pentacles depending on the deck. And each one of these represents a different element, from air, water, fire, to earth. Each suit has 14 cards, numbering from 1 to 10, plus 4 court cards: king, queen, knight, and page. But perhaps the most intriguing images can be found in a 5th suit, called the Major Arcana, which is a central defining part of the deck, comprised of 21 cards plus the Fool. There are 78 cards in total. Although it is often used for divination purposes, the tarot can also be a quite unique tool for meditation, deep introspection, and creative insight. But moving beyond tarot, the archetypes are universal principles that transcend language, cultural barriers, time, and history. They go beyond the personal and on to the collective, with recurring patterns that we can see almost about anywhere. It is the reason why they go hand in hand with art. I believe it's extremely useful for any artist to be able to understand, channel, and translate these forces into works of art. Especially if you're an artist that is primarily interested in narrative art, that is, the art of storytelling. And talking about stories, this is my personal story and journey with the tarot. It was in December of 2016 that I finally started to get to work on my first formal tarot deck, that is the Tarot Neocolonial de las Americas, published by US Games. I had this project in mind for many years and it haunted me. I felt like I wasn't ready for it until I was. Then in the fall of 2016, when traveling to Puerto Rico to visit my mother while looking for childhood memories and toys I grew up with in my mom's house, I incidentally found my very first deck of cards. The 1JJ Swiss Tarot, published by US Games, by the way. It was their first deck. The following year, Hurricane Maria hit the island of Puerto Rico and we lost almost everything. The house, my home studio, many family memories. But for some reason, I had brought this small deck of cards with me back to Texas. And I thought, that must be a sign. There must be some hidden meaning behind this. I can't help but think of all the things that I could have saved from that house, if only I had known beforehand, from old books to photos, memories, and so much artwork. Most of it all now gone forever. But somehow, for some mysterious reason, from all the things I could have brought with me, I managed to bring back this compact deck of cards. I felt this was deeply meaningful and had a special purpose in my life and artwork. And that is what inspired the creation of this deck, Tarot Neocolonial de las Americas. It was really born out of this idea of presenting the story of the Americas from the past 531 years in 78 cards. It makes sense to tell the story of the Americas by using the tarot, a product of the same period of which the New and Old World collided, bringing about a turning point in human history and the dawn of globalization, with all its ills and benefits. But this deck is also inspired after my own body of work that I've been developing for over 20 years. It's inspired by Spanish colonial art, by old master paintings, and other decks, such as the Tarot of Marseille and the original Rider-Waite Tarot. But it was that first deck of cards that I found from 30 years ago, which my friend Cesar, who figures as the first card, El Loco, the Fool, sold to me for $5. That's where it really all started. It's now been more than 30 years, and there's so much I can say about my friend and so much I learned from him. He not only introduced me to the tarot in my teen years, but also ignited in me a curiosity and fascination for magical realism with his stories and encounters with ghosts, the paranormal, and UFOs. An artist himself, he's been with me through thick and thin, from my very first steps and humble beginnings as an artist. From him, I learned to laugh at life and to see the world through the lenses of wonder, craziness, and playful imagination. Without him, this deck might have never come to existence. So in future videos, I'll talk more about my friend. So I invite you to learn more about the tarot. There's so many versions out there, and there's so much to be learned from it. You can get a copy of the Tarot Neocolonial de las Americas deck and book set either through Amazon or US Games systems. In the next video, I'm going to be talking about the Fool, which is the first of the major arcana. And in subsequent videos, I'm going to be discussing each one of the 21 major arcanas, talking about the qualities and the aspects of each one of these archetypes. So stay tuned for future videos on those topics. Hi, just a quick reminder to let you know that if you like this video, please make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and make sure that you also hit the notification bell to get updates on future videos just like this one. Thank you very much for listening and watching my videos. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.